In the autumn of 1933, in the rugged hill country of northeastern Tennessee, something extraordinary began to take shape. Along the winding banks of the Clinch River, men arrived by the thousands, men who had known hunger, who had watched their farms fail and their savings vanish. They came with calloused hands and cautious hope. They came not just to build a dam, they came to build a future. The world they were stepping into was one of profound suffering. The Great Depression had hollowed out the American economy like a fire moving through dry timber. Unemployment had climbed to nearly a quarter of the workforce. Banks had failed. Families had scattered. And in the valleys of East Tennessee, things had been hard long before the financial collapse arrived. The Tennessee River and its tributaries were ungovernable forces, ancient, beautiful, and merciless. Floods came without warning and left devastation in their wake. Communities had endured this cycle for generations, and there seemed to be no end in sight. The land was rich in natural beauty, but poor in almost everything else. Electricity was a luxury most families in the valley had never known. President Franklin D. Roosevelt believed government could change that. In the spring of 1933, as part of his sweeping New Deal legislation, he signed the act that created the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. The mandate was breathtaking in its ambition: bring economic development to one of the most impoverished regions in the nation, tame the rivers, generate electricity, build roads, employ the desperate, give an entire region a reason to believe again. And the very first thing the TVA was authorized to do, written directly into its founding legislation, signed on May 18, 1933, was build a dam on the Clinch River at a site engineers had been eyeing since as early as 1911. That site was originally called Cove Creek. It sat just over 79 miles upstream from where the Clinch emptied into the Tennessee River in the layered hills of Anderson and Campbell counties. The Clinch itself was a remarkable river, traveling 300 miles southwest from its headwaters in Virginia, threading through sparsely populated ridgelines before joining the broader Tennessee system. Engineers had long recognized that this particular bend in the river, just downstream from where Cove Creek joined the Clinch from the northwest, was an ideal location for a major dam. For 2 decades, the site had attracted interest and controversy in equal measure. In the early 1920s, private interests, including the Tennessee Electric Power Company, the Knoxville Power and Light Company, and Union Carbide, had applied for permits to build there. All were eventually withdrawn or rejected. One man stood at the center of that opposition: Senator George Norris of Nebraska. Norris had spent years fighting for government-owned utilities. He didn't oppose the dam. He opposed private ownership of it. A private company, he argued, would focus almost entirely on power generation and ignore the broader needs of the valley: flood control, river navigation, regional coordination. His vision was larger. He imagined an entire network of dams working together, regulating the outflow of the Tennessee River into the lower Mississippi, serving communities rather than shareholders. The Army Corps of Engineers made several proposals to build at Cove Creek through the late 1920s, but Congress rejected the mandate, and President Calvin Coolidge vetoed what legislation did advance. Norris kept fighting, and eventually history moved in his direction. On July 30th, 1933, the TVA renamed the Cove Creek Project in his honor. Construction began that October 1st. The engineering challenge was immense, made more daunting by the fact that the TVA itself was barely months old. It had no dam building experience of its own. The agency leaned heavily on designs originally developed by the Army Corps of Engineers and sought extensive consultation from the Bureau of Reclamation. There were questions about the geology of the site, about how the dam should be anchored, about how to manage the river during construction, while workers poured hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of concrete in carefully sequenced lifts. The Clinch could not simply be stopped. It had to be managed, diverted, and eventually surrendered to. Into this complexity came a man whose contribution would prove as enduring as the concrete itself. Roland Wank, a Hungarian-American architect born in 1898, revised the initial engineering plans and gave Norris Dam something the Bureau of Reclamation's original drawings had not fully considered: beauty. Wank applied a modernist aesthetic to the structure, with clean geometric lines, smooth curved surfaces, and a deliberate absence of decorative ornament. It was a bold and controversial choice in 1933. Critics questioned whether a public works project should look so spare, so untraditional. But Wonk understood that the dam was not just infrastructure. It was a statement. It was proof that government investment could produce something worthy of admiration. The result vindicated him completely, and it launched him to the position of chief architect for the TVA, a role he would hold through 1944. The dam itself is a straight concrete gravity structure, engineered to hold back the immense pressure of water through sheer mass and downward force. It stretches 1,160 feet across the Clinch Valley. It rises 265 feet above the riverbed. When the gates finally closed on March 4, 1936, Norris Lake began its slow, inevitable rise, eventually covering 33,040 acres of water surface and tracing 809 miles of shoreline, making it the largest reservoir on any tributary of the Tennessee River. The dam's first generator came online on July 28th of that year. At maximum capacity, the facility generates 126 megawatts of power. The final construction cost was $36 million, equivalent to more than $600 million today. But the numbers that impress are not always the ones displayed on dedication plaques. To build Norris Dam, the TVA acquired over 152,000 acres of land. More than 10,800 families were uprooted. Over 5,200 graves were disinterred. The dead themselves relocated, reburied in 4 memorial cemeteries established by the TVA: Baker's Forge Memorial Cemetery, Cumberland View Cemetery, Big Barren Memorial Cemetery, and New Lewiston Memorial Cemetery. Entire communities ceased to exist. The town of Lewiston, 20 miles upstream from the dam, was completely swallowed by the rising reservoir. Big Barren and Baker's Forge disappeared beneath the water. Portions of Caryville flooded. Structures were physically moved. Lives were legally purchased and practically shattered. Union County bore the heaviest burden of all. It was the most negatively impacted county in the entire Norris Project. The Big Valley region, a quiet, close-knit community of farms and small settlements, was inundated with quiet finality. And despite the promises made during the project that electrification would follow, many communities in Union County did not receive electricity until the late 1940s and early 1950s. The benefits of this great progressive achievement, it turned out, were not distributed equally. Some of the displaced never recovered from the loss of their land, their community, and their way of life. Some did not survive it at all. To house the workers who built the dam, the TVA constructed the town of Norris, Tennessee, a planned community designed from the ground up, with schools, parks, and housing laid out according to careful civic planning. It was itself an experiment in what a modern American community might look like. And just as workers needed a road to reach the site, the TVA widened a section of what would become U.S. Highway 441, today known as the Norris Freeway, which still crosses the top of the dam and connects the area to Knoxville to the south. When the dam was finished, the world came to see it. President Roosevelt visited, and so did Eleanor Roosevelt. Journalist Ernie Pyle described it with his characteristic, plain-spoken awe. Swiss architect Le Corbusier, one of the most celebrated designers of the 20th century, made the journey to Tennessee and stood before its face. French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre came. Jesse Owens visited. Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru arrived to see what American public investment had wrought. In 1941, Norris Dam became the subject of a photography exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. A dam, displayed in a fine art museum. That fact alone tells you what Norris Dam had come to represent. Not merely engineering, but aspiration. Not just concrete, but conviction. Folk songs were written about it. Books and plays drew on its story. Films captured the drama of its construction. It became a symbol of something Americans desperately needed in those years. Evidence that collective effort, guided by purpose, could produce something lasting and transformative. Today, Norris Dam still stands on the Clinch River, still generating power, still holding back the water. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2016. State parks, wildlife management areas, and forests protect much of the land surrounding the reservoir. The Norris Freeway still crosses its crest. History rarely offers clean stories. Norris Dam is a testament to ingenuity, to public investment, and to what a government can accomplish when it commits to something larger than any single interest. It is also a sobering reminder that progress carries a price, and that the price is not always paid equally by those who celebrated the achievement and those who were displaced to make it possible. Both things are true. Both things deserve to be remembered. If you found this history worth knowing, subscribe for more stories of human ambition in steel, stone, and concrete.